Welcome back, students. This is your Dean CountXevious. Today, we are going to look at the meta simplified for the next GBL variant, and that is your Remix Cup. So what is the Remix Cup? Basically, what Niantic did is they picked up 10 most used Pokemon across the meta and just decided to ban them. This is a good creative way and a good creative opportunity to go try different team builds because you're no longer afraid of, let's say, a big, thick bunny rabbit like an Azumarill, for example. So how is this meta going to shape up? I'm going to get you through a really short and sweet meta simplified video. Okay, the most important of these bans is going to be Azumarill. Based on these 10 bans, how the meta is going to evolve is going to be really interesting to see. So for the meta simplified, like usual, I'm going to put Pokemon in boxes. The one at the top beats the one below it, or the one in the furthest in the left beats the one on the right. So you have Registeel, Bastiodon together in one group because Regi beats Bastiodon, and then you have the Flyers where you have Altaria that's going to be able to beat Mandibuzz, and which both of them are going to be able to beat the Tropius. Then you have the Charmers, Clefable, Wigglytuff. It's IV dependent, so put your IVs down and hope you can pick up that matchup. So it's interchangeable, but they're Charmers. They essentially do the same exact function. When it comes to counter users, you have a little bit more diversity. You have Defense Deoxys that is going to be at the top. It's mostly because it is, let's say, it uses counter, but is essentially not exactly a counter user. But since it has counter, it's going to do well against the rest of the counter users. So Deoxys beats Medicham if you have Thunderbolt and Psycho Boost. It beats Machamp, and it also beats Scrafty. Scrafty Deoxys is pretty close, so in the end, it depends on who shields what. With these in mind, we can now, let's say, picture the initial meta, basically. It's going to be what I call the rectangle of life, with A beating B, B beating C, and C beating D, and so on. So the steel types, I think these are going to be the most meta defining mons because of, I think there will be a lot more Charmers here. So the steel types, they are at the top. So what do they give you? They beat the Flyers, which is in the blue box, Altaria, Mandibuzz, and Tropius. They also beat the Fairy types. So which is really good because these could be two dominant types. And what beats the steel types? This is going to be our counter users. So basically Deoxys, Medicham, Machamp, and Scrafty. So as I said before, this is going to be a rectangle of life. Since steel has such a very dominant matchup, you have the counters to the steels, which is going to be your counter users, and the counter to these counter users is going to be the two types that the steels are going to be really good at, and that's your Altarias, your flying, and your Charmers. As you can see in the graph, the Charmers also beat the flying types. The only exception being Tropius. Tropius can beat the Charmers in a one-shield scenario. Whenever there's an exception to a typing, that you see these dotted boxes and with the color of the typing, and this essentially means that they are the exception and they don't lose to the group that's in the dotted boxes. Another exception here is for the fighters is Machamp. Machamp is an exception because if you land the bait, if you can land the rock slide, you beat the Flyers. So it has a blue box on it. Okay, now that we have our initial box, let's look at a broader view. Are there Pokemon that do well against all of these Pokemon? And yes, there are. These are going to be your Psychic types, your Shadow Hypnos, your Hypnos, and Cresselia. Cresselia is at the last because Hypno can have access to Shadow Ball, and this will change the matchup. Based on what movesets you pick on the Hypno, it can pick different matchups. Ice Punch Hypno can pick Altaria Tropius, but a Thunder Punch Shadow Ball might have difficulties. There are certain exceptions to this. Yes, the Psychic types beat the counter users, but a counter user like Scrafty with access to Foul Play can definitely put the Psychic users in trouble. More often than not, the Psychic types do beat the Flyers. Cresselia to Altaria is an IV dependent matchup. You can check it out in our previous video by Talonflow. We will link it somewhere here. Cresselia can beat Altaria, but the only definitive losses that the Psychic types have is against Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz, with it being a part Dark type, really punishes a psychic type safe swap. Hypno can also do well against Registeel if you have access to Fire Punch, but Hypno does get hardballed by Bastiodon unless you are brave enough to run Focus Blast and bring the spice and frustration to your opponents. Another type of Pokemon that I would like to point out is the Ice types, specifically Alolan Ninetales, because it's Ice Fairy. So what it brings to you is, other than the Steel types, it can do well against everything else in the meta. Once shielded, it can take on the Charmers, it can take on a Hypno if the Hypno does not have access to Fire Punch. It can also deal with the Cresselia pretty well. It does well against the Fighters, it also does well against the Flyers. So basically it just covers one half of the meta except the Steel types. So if you want to have, let's say, Steel, and you want to cover the counters to Steel, you can pair it up with a Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales. This is the matchups for Powder Snow. The other Powder Snow user is Frostlass. Frostlass, as usual, is always going to be an amazing safe swap, as it's always been in every meta that it's been. And I think it could come in handy because Shadow Ball still hurts the Registeel and also the Bastiodon. Unlike Alolan Ninetales, it does not get totally walled by the Steel types. Okay, so we have a set of Pokemon that cover the entire right side of the meta. We have Pokemon that cover the entire left side of the meta, and these are going to be your grass types. Alright, as you can see here, we have Chestnut that's I put on the left, which means Chestnut beats Meganium. But Chestnut does come with, let's say, a negative thing that it loses to the counter types. It also loses, other than Scrafty, it also loses to the Charmers. Meganium, on the other hand, can help you pick up the Steel types because of its Earthquake threat, and it's also very, very bulky. It can also do well against the counter users. It can also do well against the Psychic types. It also does well in the one-shots against the Charmers. Meganium, with its bulk, can really, really help you guys out in this meta. According to me, this meta is going to be your Steel types, Fairy types, and how you're going to counter them as a whole. For that, let's say Core Breaker-ish Pokemon are something like a Wishcash, Quagsire. They do neutral and they do super effective damage to the Steel types and take neutral from the Charmers. And Quag also has access to Sludge Bomb, which can definitely surprise the Charmers. It also can act as partial covers for the Flyers because Wishcast has access to Blizzard and it can beat the Mandibus in the Zero Shields going straight Blizzard. You have Stone Edge on the Quag, which can also do really, really well against the Flyers. Except Tropius, of course. Tropius is always going to be a problem to the Mud Boys. Alright, there you have it, folks. That is the Remix Cup Meta Simplified. On the right, you will also see some safe swaps. I think these are potentially some of the best safe swaps you can have in the game, basically. And they're all listed here. And this is going to be your Vigoroth, Return Sableye, your Politoed, and your Jellicent. Politoed, mostly because Earthquake Blizzard you can definitely take opponents by surprise. Even Blizzard is very good coverage for your negative matchups, and Weather Ball is just amazing. One move every 4 seconds is always amazing. Shadow Zapdos is let's say a surprise here because of the amount of damage it can do. You give it a little bit of energy advantage, it can shred through everything in this meta except Bastiodon. Bastiodon just sits there, takes the punishment, and smackdown downs the Zapdos. So as long as your opponent doesn't have a Bastiodon, it's a very, very good safe shot. Thanks a lot, folks, for watching, and if you liked our content, please do like, share, and subscribe. If I've made any mistakes and if you have any questions, always drop it down in the comment sections below. We always reply to the comments and questions. Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon. Bye.